The Tsar was mildly under the influence of the Tsarina, an influence which increased with the years and the difficulties. Together they constituted a kind of unit, and that combination shows already to what an extent the personnel, under pressure of circumstances, is supplemented by the group. But first we must speak of the Tsarina herself. Maurice Palolog, Maurice Palolog, the French ambassador at Petrograd during the war, a refined psychologist for French academicians and janitresses, offers a meticulously leaked portrait of the last Tsarina. Moral restlessness, a chronic sadness, infinite longing, intermittent ups and downs of strength, anguishing thoughts of the invisible other world, superstitions. Are not all these traits so clearly apparent in the personality of the Empress, the characteristic traits of the Russian people? Strange as it may seem, there is there is in its saccharine lie just a grain of truth. The Russian satirist Saltykov, with some justification, called the ministers and governors from among the Baltic barons Germans with a Russian soul. It is indubitable that aliens in no way connected with the people developed the most pure culture of the genuine Russian administrator. But why did the people repay with such open hatred at Tsarina, who, in the words of Palolog, has so completely assimilated their soul? The answer is simple. In order to justify her new situation, this German woman adopted with a kind of cold fury all the traditions and nuances of Russian medievalism, the most meagre and crude of all medievalisms, in that very period when the people were making mighty efforts to free themselves from it. This Asian princess was literally possessed by the demon of autocracy, having risen from the rural corner to the aids of Byzantine despotism. She will not for anything take a step down. In the Orthodox religion, she found a mysticism and a magic adapted to her new lot. She believed the more inflexibly in her vocation, the more naked became the fullness of the old regime. With a strong character and a gift for dry and hard exaltations, the Tsarina supplemented the weak-willed Tsar ruling over him. On March 17, 1916, a year before the revolution, when the tortured country was already writhing in the grip of defeat and ruin, the Tsarina wrote to her husband at military headquarters, "You must not give indulgences, a responsible ministry, etc., or anything that they want. This must be your war and your peace, and the honor yours and our fatherlands, and not by any means the Dumas. They have not the right to say a single word in these matters." This was, at any rate, a thoroughgoing program, and it was in just this way that she always had the whip hand over the continually vacillating Tsar. After Nicholas' departure to the army in the capacity of the fictitious commander-in-chief, the Tsarina began openly to take charge of internal affairs. The ministers came to her with reports as to a regent. She entered into a conspiracy with a small camarilla against the Duma, against the ministers, against the staff generals, against the whole world, to some extent indeed against the Tsar. On December 6th, 1916, the Tsarina wrote to the Tsar, "Once you have said that you want to keep Protopopov, how does the Premier Trepov to against you? Bring down your first on the table. Don't yield. Be the boss. Obey your firm little wife and your friend. Believe in us." Again 3 days late. "You know you are right. Carry your head high. Command Trepov to work with him. Strike your first on the table." Those phrases sound as tough they are made up, but they are taken from authentic letters. Besides, you cannot make up things like that. On December 13, the Tsarina suggests to the Tsar anything but this responsible ministry about which everybody has gone crazy. Everything is getting quiet and better, but people want to feel your hand. How long they have been saying to me for whole years the same thing. Russia loves to feel the whip. That is their nature. This Orthodox Asian with a Windsor upbringing and a Byzantine crown on her head not only incarnates the Russian soul, but also organically despises it. Their nature demands the whip, writes the Russian Tsarina to the Russian Tsar about the Russian people, just 2 months and a half before the monarchy tips over into the abyss. In contrast to her force of character, the intellectual force of the Tsarina is not higher, but rather lower than her husband's. Even more than he, she craves the society of simpletons, the close and long-lasting friendship of the Tsar and Tsarina with their lady-in-waiting Birubova gives a measure of the spiritual stature of this autocratic pair. Birubova has described herself as a fool, and this is not modesty. White, to whom we cannot deny an accurate A, characterized her as a most commonplace, stupid Petersburg young lady, homely as a bubble in the biscuit dough. In the society of this person with whom elderly officials, ambassadors, and financiers obsequiously flirted, and who had just enough brains not to forget about her own pockets, the Tsar and Tsarina will pass many hours consulting her about affairs, corresponding with her and about her. She was more influential than the State Duma and even than the ministry. But Birubova herself was only an instrument of the friend whose authority superseded all three. "This is my private opinion," writes the Tsarina to the Tsar. "I will find out what our friend thinks." The opinion of the friend is not private, it decides. I am firm," insists the Tsarina a few weeks later, "but listen to me. I.e., this means our friend, and trust in everything. I suffer for you as for the gentle, soft-hearted child who needs guidance but listens to bad counselors, while a man sent by God is telling him that he should do. The friend sent by God was Gregory Rasputin. The prayer and the help of our friend, then all will be well. If we did not give him, all will if we did not have him, all will have been over long ago. I will have been over long ago. I am absolutely convinced of that. Throughout the whole reign of Nicholas and Alexandra, soothsayers and hysterics were imported for the court not only from all over Russia, but from other countries. Special official purveyors arose, who would gather around the momentary oracle, forming a powerful upper chamber attached to the monarch. There was no lack of bigoted old women with the title of countess, nor of functionaries weary of doing nothing, nor of financiers who had entire ministries in their wire, with a jealous eye on the uncharted competition of mesmerists and sorcerers. The high priesthood of the Orthodox Church will hasten to pry their way into the holy of holies of the intrigue. We'd call it this ruling circle against which he himself twice stubbed his toe, the leprous core Camarilla. The more isolated the dynasty became, the more unsheltered the autocrat felt, the more needed some help from the other world. Certain savages, in order to bring good weather, wave in the air of shingle on a string. The Tsar and Tsarina uses shingles for the greatest variety of purposes. In the Tsar's train, there was a whole chapel full of large and small images and all sorts of fetishes, which were brought to bear, first against the Japanese, then against the German artillery. The level of the core circle really had not changed much from generation to generation. Under Alexander II, called the Libertator, the Grand Dukes had sincerely believed in house spirits and witches. Under Alexander III, it was no better, only quieter. The leprous Camarilla had existed always, changed only its personnel and its method. Nicholas II did not create, but inherited from his ancestors this core atmosphere of savage medievalism. But the country during these same decades had been changing, its problems growing more complex, its culture rising to a higher level. The core circle was thus left far behind. Although the monarchy did under compulsion make concessions to the new forces, nevertheless, inwardly it completely failed to become modernized. On the contrary, it withdrew into itself. Its spirits of medievalism thickened under the pressure of hostility and fear until it acquired the character of this distinguishing nightmare overhanging the country. Towards November 1905, that is, at the most critical moment of the first revolution, the Tsar writes in his diary, "We got acquainted with a man of God, Gregory, from the Tobolsk province, that was Rasputin, a Siberian peasant with a bald scar on his head, the result of a beating for horse stealing, put forward at an appropriate moment. This man of God soon found official helpers, or rather they found him, and thus was formed a new ruling class which got a firm hold of the Tsarina and threw her of the Tsar. From the winter of 1913 to 14, it was openly said in Petersburg society that all high appointments, posts, and contracts depended upon the Rasputin clique. The elder himself gradually turned into a state institution. He was carefully guarded and no less carefully sought after by competing ministers. Spies of the police department kept a diary of his life by hours and did not fail to report how on a visit to his home village of Pokrovsky he got into a drunken and bloody fight with his own father on the street. On the same day that this happened, the September 9, 1915, Rasputin sent two friendly telegrams, one to Tsarskoye Selo to the Tsarina, the other to her headquarters to the Tsar. In epic language, the police spies registered from day to day the level of the friend. He returned today 5 o'clock in the morning completely drunk. On the night of 55 to 56, the actress V spent the night with Rasputin. He arrived with Princess D, the wife of a gentleman of the bedchamber of the Tsar court, at the Hotel Astoria, and right beside this came home from Tsarskoye Selo about 11 o'clock in the evening. Rasputin became home with Princess she very drunk, and together they went out immediately. In the morning of or evening or the following day, a trip to Tsarskoye Selo. To a sympathetic question from the spy as to why the elder was thoughtful, the answer came: "Can't decide whether to convoke the Duma or not." And then again, he came home at 5 in the morning pretty drunk. Thus for months and years the melody was played on 3 keys: pretty drunk, very drunk, and completely drunk. These communications of state importance were brought together and countersigned by the General of Gendarmes, Gorbachev. The bloom of Rasputin's influence lasted 6 years, the last years of the monarchy. His life in Petrograd, says Prince Yusupov, who participated to some extent in that life, and after war killed Rasputin, became a continual revel, the drunken debauch of a galley slave who had come into an unexpected fortune. "I had at my disposition," wrote the president of the Duma, Rotsianko, "a whole mass of letters from mothers whose daughters has been dishonored by this insolent rake. Nevertheless, the Petrograd Metropolitan Pietirin owed his position to Rasputin, as also the almost illiterate Archbishop Varnava, the procuror of the Holy Synod. Sabler was long sustained by Rasputin, and Premier Kokovtsev was removed at his wish, having refused to receive the elder. Rasputin appointed Sutremur president of the Council of Ministers, Protopopov minister of the Interior, the new procuror of the Synod Raiv, and many others. The ambassador of the French Republic, Palologue, saw an interview with Rasputin, embraced him, and cried, "Voil veritable alumin," hoping in this way to win the heart of the Tsarina to cause of France. The Jew Sinanovich, financial agent of the elder himself, under the eye of the secret police as a nightclub gambler and usurer, introduced into the Ministry of Justice through Rasputin, the completely dishonest creature Dobrovolsky.